How will having a First Nations voice help Yolŋu people on homelands and in the northeast Arnhem Land, and through this, all those other Indigenous Australians? How will it help?
Thank you. Guyula, Dean Parkin.
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. I can't speak exactly because this isn't my country, so I'm not going to make that assumption, but I think we've heard tonight on some of the issues that we've already canvassed here with respect to language and with respect to education and the way that those issues are dealt with in this region. The experts for those issues are here in this country, in this region, to understand how we best deal with the issues of homelands, how we deal best with the issues of education in this region, how we deal best with the complexities around the language. The answers are not in Canberra. The answers aren't with politicians and bureaucrats in Canberra necessarily, or even in Darwin and places like that. The real expertise, the real wisdom, the real understanding of how things work on the ground are here. And so the voice is absolutely about making sure that those voices are involved when decisions are being made about homelands, when decisions are being made about education and language, that the people who understand how it actually works here are at the table advising the politicians and the bureaucrats about what needs to happen. It's about really getting in there.
Jacinta?
Well, everyone knows my position on this, but
Maybe not. I mean,
well,
some people have heard a little bit about, but what is your position?
Personally, I don't feel as though something like this needs to be constitutionally enshrined. I look at the success of the Gumach, what they've done already with their country and the way that they educate their young people, the fact that they've got their own industry up and running, they've got the bauxite mine. All those things have already happened, they've all taken place, and it's all successfully occurred without the need for constitutionally enshrining a voice into Parliament to do so. And I guess my biggest concern with this idea of a constitutionally enshrined voice to Parliament is the fact that it's another bureaucracy. We want less bureaucracy in our lives so that we can get on with taking control of our lives. And a lot of representatives pushing for this particular thing are those who have probably been part of a lot of the bureaucracies, an industry that has been built on the misery of Indigenous Australians. And sure enough, I'm sure they will be well positioned to have a role in it. There's no costings involved in terms of what it's going to cost the taxpayer, who's going to miss out because of this huge layer of bureaucracy that we're looking at establishing. And it also suggests that as Indigenous Australians, we're always going to be marginalised and always going to need something like this.
Excuse me, can I just come in on that? And sorry to interrupt, but it's interesting, you made that point in your speech the other day. Can you just explore that? In what way are people marginalised by the process?
No, it's suggesting we need this voice because we're in a position of marginalisation. The way I see it, I would like to see us all as equally taking advantage, having these opportunities, just like Gumach have been able to do, and to live our own lives, which would make us equal to everybody else, which we wouldn't then need to be a stand-apart voice. You know, in my view, we're all mixed up. We're all got mixed up heritage, and the territory where blackfellas, whitefellas, people of different backgrounds all together successfully getting on with one another. I wouldn't want to see us divided up along the lines of race in that regard. And I certainly don't want to continue to pour money into an industry that's continually been driven on the back of the misery of Indigenous Australians and propping up another bureaucracy. We've had bureaucracies in place, they've failed. It's not something new, it's just enshrining a bureaucracy into the Constitution. And if there's bureaucracies that have failed, that have not been accountable for their failures, how are we then going to adjust this, which it will exist in the Constitution and can't be dismantled should it fail?
Linda, I know you want to respond to that. Can you just hold that thought for a minute? Because Mayatili, the question was directly about a community like this, and then how can that be replicated elsewhere? And just go back to the point that Jacinta makes, this is a really successful community. It's a community that is already achieving a lot of those outcomes. Is a voice necessary?
I think it's really important to understand that we as Indigenous people aren't a homogenous group of people. This land we call Australia is just a continent. It is made up of many, many, many different nations. It's like saying, oh, you know, referring to people as Asian or European, you know. I think also as Yolŋu people, again, and I can only speak for my people, our history and our first contact with Balanda people wasn't until the late 1930s. That's when the Methodist missionaries first came along. We live in a very remote place. We just happen to live in a geographical region that is built on very rich bauxite shelves. We can't compare our history and our successes and our trials and tribulations to our brothers and sisters along the East Coast or the West Coast or in the centre. So I think it's very important to explore what a voice would mean. How do we all come together as different Indigenous nations from around the country to find something where that intersection lies, knowing that we're all different, we've had different journeys, and we have different lenses and perspectives on things, but trying to come together to and for the benefit of all our people and all our nations here.
Linda, I really want to stay with Guyula's question because it does raise something that how can a voice speak to the diversity that, as you've said, Mayatili, it's not a homogenous community. Speak to the diversity and the different experiences and expectations and challenges of Indigenous communities right across the country.
Thank you for that. You know, the Prime Minister said today, if not now, when? If not now, when? And when you're enshrining a voice in the Constitution, it means it is permanent. I will not be in the Parliament forever. Jacinta will not be in the Parliament forever. We are elected by everyone, not just by First Nations people. And that's really important. What we're talking about here is a permanent voice that no government, like they did to ATSIC, can be gotten rid of. That's why enshrinement is so important.
But there was corruption in ATSIC.
And when it comes to another bureaucracy, it is going to be a body that we will consult with, you and everyone else, on what it will look like and how it will operate. That is not the decision of politicians. This is something for you and the Australian people.
Excuse me, Linda. The one thing that the Prime Minister has made very clear is that it will be a decision for politicians as to what the voice, the body looks like, how it is structured,
That's correct.
What its range of powers and its reach is. So, what does that mean going forward? Can that be changed by governments to come?
Yes, what it means going forward, everyone, is that this is not just about symbolism. This is finally our people being able to advise the Parliament on whether or not the Parliament is getting it right. Is it going to address child abuse? Is it going to address women's domestic violence? Is it going to address educational outcomes? Is it going to address the issues that affect our daily lives? And that is so important. That has not been there, and unless we have a voice, then it won't be there. Going forward, so I am listening to the thousands of people and everyone that went to Uluru and their voices. on saying we want a voice that is permanent, and we want the Parliament to have the power to design the voice. And that will be done after consultation, Stan. That won't be done out of my head or anyone's head.
Could I just ask...
That'll be done by talking to people.
Thanks. Could I just ask for a show of hands? If people could put their hands up, if they are really... if they really understand the idea of a voice, if it's really clear to people. If it's very clear to you, could you raise your hands? It's about not even half. So a lot of people are unclear still. Yiŋiya, amongst your constituency, how aware are people about what a voice may be?
Well, the voice from the centre, or voice from the heart,
Yes.
as this is going on about is a fairly new, because it's coming from the heart, and it's got something to do with the treaty or the constitution or the recognition that we try to create. But the voice is new in Aboriginal communities. I don't know about the non-Indigenous people, about looking at what a voice is from the heart. But voice, this hasn't been properly, Stan, this hasn't been properly consulted in communities. And I know a lot of Indigenous people still try to find out what voice is. Unless you join it with a treaty, then they will understand what we're talking about here. Treaty and the truth-telling. People will only understand because of treaty. They won't understand, even people in communities, simply because there's no proper consultation being going on around communities, in Aboriginal communities and the homelands around here. And that's what I know.
Yiŋiya, when you talk about a treaty, I know that you have a phrase that you use, a slogan that you use, and that is to put Yolŋu first, or Yolŋu way first. Does the voice put Yolŋu way first, or would you favour a treaty instead?
It will be either. Treaty, the voice will come from Yolŋu, and the Yolŋu way first can be with the voice from the Yolŋu working towards treaty.